guys, it's Adam here with the Adam's Lights Facebook page. Thank you for watching this video. If you haven't had a chance yet, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I've got a lot of videos up and a lot more coming your way. So if you've already subscribed, thank you, and thank you for watching this. I've gotten a lot of requests from you guys over the last few months that I've had this page up, and I mean a lot of requests for help programming your Federal Signal Vision light bar. It's quite a bit more complicated than your average light bar to program, and even more complicated than the Smart Siren controller, if any of you are familiar with that controller. And it's certainly more complicated than your average, MX7000 or anything like that. So I've had so many requests, I thought I would just take a second, try to make this quick little video of a step-by-step instructions on how to program your Smart Siren controller / Vision light bar to do what it is you want it to do. I'm going to put the link to the programming manual, which is on Federal Signal's website. I'm going to put the link to that in the description below. And I'm also going to put it in the description on my Facebook page. So if you're not following me on Facebook, it's at Adam's Lights. Please go join my Facebook page and you can get that information there. If you have any questions, I will also put my email in the description of this email. Feel free to click that, send me an email. I'll try to help you however I can. I don't work for Federal Signal, so I don't know everything, but I've done quite a bit of trial and error. So with that, let's get to it. So before I get going, a couple disclaimers quickly. Obviously, because my bar is mounted on the wall, there are some functions that I do not use that are functions of this controller / light bar. One of the main ones being the park disengage. If you were using this in a vehicle, you had your siren running, when you throw your car in park, it will automatically mute the siren, so it doesn't keep going when you get out of the vehicle. Being that this is mounted on a wall, I do not need that function, so I did not wire it up. It is a function of this bar, so feel free, again, to download the manual and read into that a little more on your own time. Okay, so right out of the box, your controller / light bar should have some default programs that it will work with. Now, you see on my controller, I've got several labels with the left arrow, right arrow, left alley, right alley, steady burn, all bar, inboard, etc., etc. I honestly have not had a chance to relabel these buttons. They don't do what they say they do. However, I believe these buttons are the standard button labels for default operation. So left alley, right alley operation, etc., etc. When you plug everything in using the telephone cable, and it's a 4-conductor telephone cable, standard telephone cable that you can buy at Walmart, as long as it is a 4-conductor cable. You connect that to the Smart Siren controller, or the amp, or whatever you want to call it, and then that connects to the Vision with a Cat5 cable, a regular Cat5 network computer cable. Once you make that connection and power everything up, the Vision will go into a self-test that takes about 3 seconds, which essentially just rotates all of the pods one full rotation and helps them find their home position. After that test, your controller should look a bit like mine, with the well lit up as well as the reset button. In this mode, it's ready to go. Now, I have my controller programmed the same as the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, which is where I currently live, so that the first position on the slider switch is just rear warning. The second position is all warning lights with no siren. The third position is all warning lights with a siren, with a little more active flash pattern than what position 2 was. So in off position, there's no siren, even though it says whale. First position, no siren. Second position, no siren. But as soon as I hit third position, the siren will automatically kick on for full code 3. You can put it in code 3 position and turn off the siren so that you can put it in code 3 and get the updated lighting flash pattern without the actual siren. That is a possibility. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department also uses an Opticom in their center pod, which is also engaged in position 3 as well. I cannot get my hands on one of those, so I just have a regular rotator in center pod. But that is a major difference from my bar to theirs. All of these functions, as you see, left alley, right alley, will show up in the display unit. You can, at any time, you can turn any function off, even including rear flash or any pattern you have, by tapping the buttons again. Or, if they're on, you can hit the reset button and it will reset the whole bar. It will home all of the pods and then recenter them on their home positions. When nothing is on, as it is currently in this setup as you see here, hitting the reset button repeatedly will change the brightness of the buttons. Every time you push it, it will get darker and darker until it goes off, and then it will reset at the top again. Okay, so in addition to the 3-position slide switch, we also have a series of buttons. 4 along the top row, 8 along the middle row, and 5 on the bottom row. The 4 along the top row can be programmed for any function at all, whether it controls the light bar itself or one of the 4 relays on the power supply. The 8 buttons in the middle row are all related to audible functions: radio, PA address, wail, yelp, high-low, priority, manual, and air horn. Those 8 buttons are fixed functions and cannot be changed. On the bottom row, the reset button is always the reset button and cannot be changed. However, the 4 other buttons on the bottom row, labeled on my controller as steady burn, all bar, inboard, and flash, can all also be programmed for any function, including control of the Vision light bar or any one of the 4 relays on the power supply. Now for me, because I don't need any rear-facing flash patterns because of the nature of my collection, I have opted to find as many flash patterns that flash solely to the front as my 3 positions on my slider switch. So for me, position 1 is just a basic in-out flash pattern. This is flash pattern 1 for me. Number 2 on the slider switch is a front oscillating pattern. As you can see, all the pods oscillate to the front, while the 2 end pods do full rotations. Position 3 on the slider switch is a randomized pattern. Now when the siren is on, you have the option to hit the priority button. The priority button will send the siren from whatever tone it is producing to a hyper yelp, and will also give you the option to change the flash pattern again to something different. A center out, a left to right, a right to left, another randomized pattern, whatever pattern you want to pick for the priority. And as soon as you hit the priority button again, it will go back to the regular code 3 operation for both the siren and the light pattern. When this is installed in a vehicle, the priority button is the same as tapping the horn if you wire it up that way. So tapping the horn of the vehicle will trigger that priority function. On this light bar and controller combination, you can have it as a toggle on, toggle off option, which I have, meaning that it will stay in priority mode until you turn it back off again, or it will do an 8-second timeout, which means when you hit the priority button, it will stay in that mode for 8 seconds and then automatically return to the normal code 3 operation. We'll cover this in the programming later. Here's a quick view of a regular smart siren that you can use with any light bar. What you may notice different about this, if you are used to using this controller, is that only the buttons along the bottom row, the 5 on the bottom, are the programmable buttons. Everything else is fixed, including the 4 on the top row. On the Vision system, you get the additional ability to program the top 4 buttons, giving you more functionality. For instance, for me, these 2 buttons really are the left and right alley of the Vision light bar. However, this button controls a relay which turns on a completely separate light bar. Many of the buttons on this particular controller control other light bars. That one controls my Code 3 SD. This one controls my Twin Sonic, which you can barely see over there. However, like I stated, these 2 do control my alleys. This one controls a function of the Vision, which is a steady burn for the entire bar. Front facing. Inboard is a center out flash pattern to the front. And lastly, flash is an alternating flash pattern with 2 lights to the front and 2 lights flashing to the rear. So as you can see, any of these buttons can be programmed for any function, whether it be the bar or a relay. Okay, now the moment you've all been waiting for. How do you program this light bar? So, first note is, how do you get into programming mode? When you turn on the light bar and it's done its reset, you should be in the state that you see it now. Unplug the telephone cable so that the controller goes off. While the cable is unplugged, hold the reset button, and while you hold the reset button, plug the telephone cable back in. When it boots up, you should see it like this, where the 4 buttons across the top are lit up, as well as the reset button. You are now in the programming mode. Okay, now that you are in the programming mode, there are several options you have. The 4 buttons across the top represent 4 different levels of programming, if you will. Level 1, Level 2, Level 3, Level 4. It should be noted that while you're in programming mode, completely forget about what any of the words say, what any of the labels may say. You may as well rip the labels off, because they are not, they don't really have any effect on what you're doing during programming mode. So just remember that this is Level 1, Level 2, Level 3, and Level 4. In Level 1, you really only have really 2 options. One is default, and the second is clear. So let's enter Level 1. So as you see right now, the reset button is flashing, and what says all bar to me is steady burn. The reset button will act as the save button for every one of these functions. So remember that, reset equals save. This button is the default button. If I were to hit this button and then the save button, it would reset this entire unit back to the factory default settings, which means the flash patterns that come default from Federal Signal, the sirens, how they react, where the alley lights are, where takedown lights are, all of the patterns and everything would be reset to factory normal. I could also hit this button, clear, and it would clear every function, so it wouldn't reset any defaults. There would be no functions assigned to any button. Basically a clean slate to work with. Once you've decided what it is you would like to do, hit save, and it will send you back to your 4 options of your levels. Once you are completely done with all 4 of your levels, you simply unplug the controller, wait a couple seconds, plug it back in, and the system is ready to go for use. Okay, so now we're going to move on to programming level 2. This is where things start to get a little more in-depth and a little more complicated. So when we push level 2, you see that you are currently in level 2. Again, the reset, or in this case, the save button is flashing. What you want to do first is program your 3 positions of the slide switch. During programming, it is important not to move the slide switch, to leave it in the off position the entire time. Instead, we are going to use these 3 buttons, 1, 2, and 3, to represent the 3 positions of the slide switch. Position 1, position 2, position 3. Easy enough. So we are going to use those buttons to represent what we're going to do. So right now I'm going to record position 1. Now I'm in position 1 and it's ready to be programmed. The program that I'm going to put in right now is program number 65, which doesn't mean much to you if you don't have the manual. So again, make sure you go check out the description and download that manual. For the purposes of programming, these buttons turn into a number pad. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm going to use those as buttons to enter flash pattern 65. So 8, 7, 6, 5. Once I push that, I press the save button, and it lets me know that that has been saved to that particular position. You go through, go back to programming mode 2, number 2, decide whichever flash pattern you want, use this as the number pad, enter it, hit save. It'll light up the number to the slide switch to essentially confirm that that's the one you want to save to. Hit save again and it'll go back to your top menu. You do that for position 3 as well. Now, if you are going to use the priority key, you can do that as well. For this function, this button here, labeled air horn for me, serves as the priority key button, similar to how these serve as 1, 2, 3. So you would do the same thing there. You would hit this button, decide, which would put you in priority mode, put in the number of the flash pattern that you want, hit save, confirm it, and then you're ready to go. Okay, so there's one more thing I would like to show you. When you're in mode 2 and you're selecting which mode of the slider switch you want to record, which for this purpose I'm going to record position 1. For me it is 65. Now what I forgot to tell you was that the lights below the numbers that you are hitting represent what you're hitting. If it's solid, it's a tens place. If it's flashing, it's the ones place. So if this, as I said, this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The fact that this is solid on 6 and flashing on 5 means that this is already in mode 65. The lights above the slider switch represent these buttons here. So again, steady burn is the tens number and flashing is the ones number. So because I've already programmed in 65, the lights are flashing or representing rather the 6 in the tens place and the 5 in the ones place. Pressing any button will automatically clear it and get you going into the next unit. As soon as I push 6 again, it goes away. 6 and then 5. I save it to there, save again, and I'm good to go. Okay, so let's get into a little more detail of what level 2 can do. So, a few new things to learn. In this indicator of the V, we're going to start looking at the left side now. And we're going to call this A, B, C, and D. Those 4 lights represent the 4 relays on the power supply. Relay A, relay B, C, D, so on. We're now going to select in mode 2 which button controls what relay. So for me, when I push this button, it shows that this button controls relay B, which is true. That's the light bar that I showed you, the Jetsonic. Pushing this button will change the relays so that that button controls whatever relay or set of relays that you want. The Smart Siren allows one button to control every combination possible of relays. So you just cycle through until you get the combination of relays that you want. So that's relay 1 and 2, or A and B. That's just C. That's A and C, B and C, A, B and C, D, A and D, B and D, A, B and D, C and D, A, C and D, and B, C, D. And then A, B, C, D. So that one button could theoretically turn on all the relays. So you keep cycling through until you get to what you want. That's what I want. I want that button to turn on relay B. I hit the save button. It lights up. It's flashing, asking to confirm. I hit save again. And now relay B is connected to that button. Again, because you can you can program all 4 of these buttons as well as these 4 buttons down here. You can go through that process and have any one of those 8 buttons control any combination of the relays on the power supply. So you just go into mode 2. You say this button, for instance, which for me turns on relay A. And you can cycle through like I did earlier until you get to whichever relay you want that button to control. You hit save, it lights it up to let you know, flashes to confirm, you hit save again, and now that button is going to control relay A. These are all toggle on, toggle off, which means you push it once to turn it on, you push it again to turn it off. Another quick note that I will tell you, although I don't use this functionality on my bar, is the ability to maintain the California spec steady red, which leaves one light facing red to the front without flashing, without rotating, without oscillating. It just steady red to the front. You can tell the bar to make that steady red come on with any one of these functions. Any one of these buttons the steady red can come on with, any one of the 4 on top, as well as any position on the slide switch. The way you do that is by pushing this button when you are already in the process of recording another position. So, for instance, let's go back to position 1 for me, which as you may remember was 65. Let's go into mode 2. I'll push position 1, which shows me 65. I can also hit this button, which lights up, which now indicates that the steady red will be part of position 1. If I hit save, it's going to ask me if that's position 1, that's what I want. I hit save again. Now I have just added the California steady red to position 1. You can go back and do that for all of the other positions if you wish, or none at all. To get rid of it, you simply go back into level 2 programming, position 1. You turn the steady red back off, you hit save, you confirm, and now the steady red is back off. Okay, another feature that I don't use but I will quickly show you is the ability to add the Signal Master flash pattern to, again, any one of the slide switch positions. You do this by utilizing this button, again, while you are in the midst of programming a position. So let's go into level 2. Let's go into position A, or position 1 on my slide switch, which as we already know is 65. By using this button, I can start cycling through the various options of the Signal Master and what it can do during position 1. The more times I push it, the more options it gives me. So again, you cycle through all the options, determine which one you want to occur while you are in position 1. Once you determine what pattern you would like in position 1, you simply hit save, confirm that it's for the first position, and save again. Now that back and forth position that you saw indicated here will occur when I put the slider switch in position 1. You can go back and do this through position 2 and 3 and have a different flash pattern for every position on the slider switch. Okay, one last specialty thing is the button function. As I've mentioned before, there are a couple different options. You can have the toggle on, toggle off, which means you push it once to turn it on, you push it again to turn it off. There is also a momentary button, which means it will only stay active for as long as you have the button held down. You push the button and hold it to have that function fire. As soon as you let go of the button, the function ceases. There's also an 8-second timeout, which means you push the button once, that function will happen for 8 seconds and then will automatically turn off. The last function, although not typically used in any kind of lighting setup, is a security lockout. This is used primarily for gun locks and those types of things. Again, because I don't have any of this connected, I don't use any of that functionality. I prefer the toggle on, toggle off, but I will show you how it can be done. So let's go into programming mode 2 again. Let's talk about this button here. Now these 4 buttons on this side, these 3 buttons on this side are going to be momentary, timeout, and the security lockout that I mentioned. If there is nothing lit up here, that's automatically a toggle on, toggle off. You use this button here to cycle through those functions. So to push it once would make this a momentary button, meaning it's only function as long as I have the button held down. Push this again, it goes to an 8-second timeout. Push it again, it goes to a security lockout. Security timeout. Again, when none of these are lit up on the right side, that means it's defaulted to a toggle on, toggle off position. You can do this for any one of the programmable buttons, however you see fit. Alright, so let's move on from level 2 into level 3. As you saw, level 2 had a lot of programming. I would say probably 80% of everything you're going to do to program and set up this bar is going to happen in level 2. Again, you will need to know the flash patterns you want ahead of time, have those picked out. Again, follow the link in the description below to get the programming guide that shows little diagrams of every flash pattern available. So that you can have that worked out. There's even a worksheet involved where you can fill out the worksheet so you know exactly what every button does. That's really helpful to do. Moving on to level 3, it's going to be really quick for most of us. Not a lot of functions in level 3, but I want to show you anyways. Basically 3 functions total in level 3 programming. First function is standard, which is what I use. Second function, if you push this button, activates a no white light mode. What that means is that in position 1 and 2 on the slide switch, whatever light that you have programmed as the takedowns will not flash during mode 1 and 2 on the slide switch. The white lights will only function once you hit the 3rd mode on the slide switch. If you leave it in standard mode without the no white light, that means all 7 pods will react to the flash pattern that you've selected regardless of what color dome or which ones that you have programmed as the takedowns. In addition to those 2 options on this level 3 programming, you also have the opportunity to decide which pod is your steady red if you activated the steady red in level 2, which we've already talked about. You utilize these buttons here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, to determine which pod you would like to be your steady red. Pushing this button would mean that pod 2 is your steady red, which is just that pod there. This would be 3. This would be 4, which is the center pod. 5 would be that one, and 6 would be that one. Pushing this button would activate both 2 and 6 as your steady reds, and pushing this button would activate both 3 and 5 as your steady reds. If you determine that you don't want to have any steady reds, you can simply go back here to the standard mode, which will eliminate any steady red pod. Once you've made your selections, you hit the save button and you're back into the main menu. And that's it for level 3. Okay, last but not least is probably for what is for me, for whatever reason, the most mentally exhausting portion of the programming. Level 4, which is primarily has to do with, not primarily, completely has to do with siren functionality. So let's go ahead and go into programming mode number 4. So as you can see, there's a lot of things happening right there. So let's talk about what each one of these do. This button here in level 4 acts as the siren function button. When this button is on, the siren keys activate the siren tone only if the siren is armed by one of the bottom row keys. The sirens are dependent on the bottom row. By turning this off, they become independent, which means you can turn on and off the siren just by hitting any one of these buttons, regardless of where the slider switch is. Because I have mine set to automatically come on in the 3rd position, I want it dependent because the siren coming on is dependent on this being in position 3. This button decides what tone you hear when you hit the priority button when you are in code 3. When this button is off and you are in wail, when you hit the priority button, you will go to yelp. When this button is lit up and you go to priority, you will go to the hyper yelp. I prefer the hyper yelp in priority mode, so I have this lit up. These two buttons here and here are disable buttons. Pressing this button disables the priority tone altogether. You can never access the priority tone via any one of these buttons when it's disabled. This button does the same thing, but for the high-low tone. High-low sirens aren't typically used in the United States, or at least not very often, so many departments disable this function so they cannot be operated even when the button is pushed. I, for my uses, like all of the sounds because I like to annoy my neighbors in every possible way. So the disable is disabled on both of those, allowing me to access all of the different tones. These two buttons act as an one or the other. What these buttons signify is when no siren is running and you push the manual button, these two buttons in programming mode determine what sounds you hear. In this mode, when this button is lit up, pressing the manual button will do a peak and hold siren tone, which is basically it wails up to the highest note of the wail and then will hold on that high note for as long as you hold the button. Pushing this button instead will make this an air horn button. I like it as the peak and hold because I already have an air horn button and it doesn't make sense to me to have two air horn buttons right side by side of each other. So I have access to the air horn and the peak and hold when no siren is on. This button is very often how you hear police chirp their sirens. The last function of level 4 programming is a siren enable button. As we've already determined, by making this a dependent siren, that means that some other button must be engaged for the siren to activate. Again, for me, it is the 3rd position on the slider switch. You can also have the siren dependent on any one of these buttons down here. For instance, by pressing this button, this essentially becomes the master on, master off button for the siren. No siren button will work unless this button is lit up. You can do the same for any one of these 4 buttons. Again, for me, it's slide switch 3. To get to that, you use this button here to determine which position on the slide switch you want the siren to be dependent upon. No position, for position 1, both position 1 and 2, just 2, 2 and 3, all 3 positions, first and third position, or as I use it, just position 3. Again, once you have made all the changes that you want to make and have the siren set up the way you want it, you hit the save button, you go back to the main menu, and you're ready to go. When you've gotten through all 4 levels of programming, you simply unplug the telephone cable, wait just a few seconds, plug it in, and you'll be set up and ready to go. So that's it, guys. That's pretty much everything I know what to tell you about the Vision Bar. Again, like I said, it's a little bit more complicated, but once you kind of wrap your head around the syntax and the different levels and what the buttons mean in each level, because they essentially change on every level. I think the save button is the only thing that stays constant through all 4 levels. Once you understand that, it's actually really not that bad. You really have to download the manual though, or at least the programming guide, or you're just not going to get through it. If for no other reason, but it lists the different flash patterns in there. And if you don't know the number of the flash pattern, you're not going to get anywhere. Again, I hope this helps. If you guys have any questions whatsoever, feel free to message me here, message me on Adams Lights on Facebook, or send me an email to my email link below, and I'm usually pretty quick at responding. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in the future.